Thank you so much for meeting with us again. We're glad to be here, and we're glad we can teach you guys a little more. We remember last week we talked a little bit about something called the Great Apostasy, and we covered that a little bit. And now today we're going to teach you a little bit about the Restoration. And can I ask you guys a question? Have you guys ever prayed before? Or do you know what prayer is?
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Have you guys ever prayed to know if something's true? Or prayed to know for an answer to anything?
Yeah.
You think you have? Yeah? Yeah. Well, the prophet Joseph Smith, who has restored the gospel in our church, and back in 1820, he had a similar situation. He just was wondering about what church to join as a kid, in his youth, and he just had a sincere question to know what gospel was true, and so he prayed. He decided to pray, and as he prayed, he got an answer, and we learn about that in his account. Joseph Smith is true.
And I would like to read a little bit of that story, and if you could read verses 8 through 10. Actually, yeah, use this one.
Okay.
This might be easier to see.
During this time of great excitement, my mind was called up to serious reflection and great uneasiness. But though my feelings were deep and often poignant, still I kept myself aloof from all these parties, though I attended their several meetings as often as occasion would permit. In process of time, my mind became somewhat partial to the Methodist sect, and I felt some desire to be united with them. But so great were the confusion and the strife among the different denominations that it was impossible for a person young as I was, and so unacquainted with men and things, to come to any certain conclusion of who was right and who was wrong. My mind at times was greatly excited. The cry and the tumult were so great and incessant. The Presbyterians were most decided against the Baptist Methodists, and used all the powers of both reason and sophistry to prove their errors, or at least to make the people think they were in error. On the other hand, the Baptists and Methodists in their turn were equally zealous in endeavoring to establish their own tenets and disprove all others. In the midst of this war of words and tumult of opinions, I often said to myself, what is to be done? Who of all these parties are right? Or, if they all are wrong together, if any one of them be right, which is it, and how shall I know it?
Alright, so here's Joseph Smith, a boy of 14 years old, and he's asking which church is right. Like, it's 1820, there's like a bunch of different churches. We got the Presbyterians, Methodists, and we got all these different churches who all have differing opinions. And Joseph Smith's question was, is any of these churches right, and should I join them? And if one of these are right, how do I know it's the right one? So what would you think, if you're in Joseph Smith's shoes in 1820, what do you think you would do with all the different tumult of opinions going on? This is up to end. Anyone?
I think we're going through a similar thing today. I think that's why we have you guys over. I just feel confused about what truth is, because there's so much of this confusion out there. And so I really connect with Joseph Smith on that I don't know what's right.
Yeah, history repeats itself.
Yeah, I want to know the truth.
Alright, so if you want to continue with the story and read 11 through 13, please.
While I was laboring under the extreme difficulties caused by the contests of these parties of religionists, I was one day reading the Epistle of James, 1st chapter and 5th verse, which reads, If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. Never did any passage of Scripture come with more power to the heart of man than this did at this time to mine. It seemed to enter with great force into every feeling of my heart. I reflected on it again and again, knowing that if any person needed wisdom from God, I did. For how to act I did not know, and unless I could get more wisdom than I then had, I would never know, for the teachers of religion of the different sects understood the same passage of Scripture so differently as to destroy all confidence in settling the question by appeal to the Bible. At length I came to the conclusion that I must either remain in darkness and confusion, or else I must do as James directs, that is, ask of God. I at length came to the determination to ask of God, concluding that if he gave wisdom to them that lacked wisdom, he would give liberally, and upbraided not, I might venture.
Alright, so the first thing that Joseph Smith does is he goes to the Bible and he looks for an answer. Right? So James says, if you lack wisdom, ask of God. So chapter 1, verse 5. So basically, that's exactly what he does. He decides that if he's going to learn anything, or if he's going to find out his answer to which church he should join, that's exactly what you should do. And he goes and asks God. And
Yeah, so we know that Joseph Smith, he had a question, and so he prayed, and he goes and asks of God. And he goes and by himself and he prays. And while he's praying, he's overcome by an evil spirit that tries to stop him from praying. And shortly after that, we know that Jesus Christ and God appeared to him in the flesh, and they appeared to him in the garden, and they reveal many things to him, and they reveal that none of the churches that are on the earth are true, and that he should join none of them, and that he was set apart to restore the church of God on the earth today. And are you guys familiar with the Bible? Pretty familiar? So we know that prophets in the Bible, like Ezekiel and Jeremiah and all those prophets of old, were prophets of God. And that Joseph Smith is similarly a prophet of God. He was called of God to be a prophet on this earth. And we know that the dispensation of the fullness of times is the dispensation in which we live in. And that was the dispensation in which Joseph Smith started when he restored the church. And if you guys could read DNC 35:17.
please read that.
And I have sent forth the fullness of my gospel by the hand of my servant Joseph, and in weakness have I blessed him.
So like we said, the Lord strengthened Joseph, and he helped him, and where he was weak, and he made him, and Joseph Smith was a prophet on the earth. And we know that Joseph Smith was given the keys of the priesthood, and the priesthood that prophets of old held back in the day, and that the priesthood, the same priesthood that Jesus Christ had on the earth when he was on the earth, the same power that he had to act in God's name, was conferred on Joseph by Peter, James, and John, the same apostles that walked on the earth with Christ.
So we believe that we hold the same priesthood that Jesus did back in the Bible when he was teaching the people. And
yeah, and so that same priesthood, and by that same priesthood with the keys in it, that we can perform ordinances, and that will help us come back to God. And we learn that in DNC 13. And if we could read that. Yeah. One of you would be willing to read that.
Upon you, my fellow servants, in the name of Messiah, I confer the priesthood of Aaron, which holds the keys of the ministering of angels, and the gospel of repentance, and the baptism by immersion for the remission of sins. And this shall never be taken again from the earth, until the sons of Levi do offer again an offering unto the Lord in righteousness.
So like we learned there, the same priesthood that was on the earth long ago with Jesus Christ was restored. It was given back to Joseph Smith. And another thing that Joseph Smith did is he restored and he brought about the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. And he received revelation from God on where to find ancient plates and ancient records of prophets of old that he translated into the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon is proof that Joseph Smith was a prophet. We learned that Joseph had very little public education, and that through the power of God, he was able to translate these ancient records and translate them into English and translate them into the Book of Mormon. And we know that the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ that testifies of Christ, that teaches of him, and that holds many truths that are not necessarily contained in the Bible. And it pairs with the Bible, and it builds off many of the same doctrines that are in that.
yeah, I would just like to say, I think it's crazy, like to say, like with all the knowledge I have, I think it's hard for me to deny that Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet of God. Like he was definitely a prophet. Like he's 14. Like I don't think he has any education. I mean, he could read obviously because he was able to read James 1:5, but other than that, I don't think he had maybe 4th grade education. And just the Book of Mormon is just a testament that he was a living prophet of God, and that he was able to translate it. And the Book of Mormon is so complicated, I don't think there's any way that Joseph Smith could have possibly translated the Book of Mormon without God and having the power of God. I'd just like to say that. I would like to ask, do you guys believe that there's a prophet of God still living on the earth today?
It sounds like something I want to be a truth. I don't know if I know it yet.
Well, we're here to tell you that there is a prophet on the earth today, and his name is Russell M. Nelson. And just like Joseph Smith, once Joseph Smith died, there were prophets called similarly by God, and now Russell M. Nelson is a prophet of God on the earth today, and he holds those same keys that Jesus Christ did when he was on the earth, the same keys that were restored to Joseph Smith, and the same keys that the priest did, that he holds those, and he directs God's church on the earth today, and he is a living prophet. And we would just like to bear our testimony that we know that if you guys pray to know that the Book of Mormon is true, and that Joseph Smith was a prophet, that you'll gain a testimony of that, and that the Spirit will confer to you that is true, and you guys will know for yourselves. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
So before our next appointment, would you guys pray to know that Joseph Smith is a true prophet?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
That'd be great. And let's set up our next appointment. Are you guys open next Wednesday? Maybe at 7 p.m.? No?
I'd be
Awesome.
happy to meet with you guys again.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.